The morning started like any other Tuesday for Dr. Kim Ji-won at the Seoul Deep Space Observatory. She was reviewing radio telescope data from the night shift when every computer screen in the facility suddenly went black. Then, without warning, text appeared in perfect Korean. "We are the Vothan Collective. Your species has been classified as suitable for integration. Surrender within 72 hours or face elimination." Ji-won stared at the message, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips. This had to be some kind of elaborate prank. But then, her phone buzzed with emergency alerts. Every phone, every television, every digital billboard across Seoul was displaying the same message in Korean. Reports flooded in from around the world. The same ultimatum appeared simultaneously in every major language on Earth. At the Blue House, President Park Min-ho was pulled from a budget meeting into an emergency session. Military advisors scrambled to make sense of the situation. The message wasn't coming from any terrestrial source they could identify. Satellite tracking showed massive objects moving past the moon's orbit, heading directly toward Earth. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our databases," reported General Yoon Tae-hyun, his voice barely steady. "These objects they're enormous. Each one is the size of Manhattan." Across the globe, world leaders held frantic video conferences. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session, but what could they possibly do? Humanity had no space fleet, no defense against an enemy that could appear anywhere in the solar system. Dr. Lee Min-ju, working at the Korean Institute of Nuclear Safety, watched in horror as her radiation detectors began screaming warnings. The alien ships weren't just approaching, they were scanning Earth with some kind of energy beam that penetrated deep underground. They were cataloging everything: military installations, population centers, industrial facilities. "They're not here to negotiate," she whispered to her colleague. "They're here to inventory." The aliens maintained complete silence for 60 hours. No response to radio transmissions, no acknowledgement of humanity's desperate attempts at communication. President Park personally recorded messages in Korean, English, and Mandarin, broadcasting them on every frequency imaginable. The response was nothing but cold silence. Then, with 12 hours remaining on their ultimatum, the aliens finally spoke again. This time, the message appeared not just on screens, but was broadcast directly into every human mind on the planet. The psychic intrusion left millions with splitting headaches and a clear, terrifying understanding that Earth was facing something far beyond their comprehension. "Your attempts at communication are noted and rejected. Your technology is primitive. Your species is fragmented and inefficient. Surrender is your only option for survival. Compliance will result in minimal casualties during the integration process." Integration process. The words sent chills through every government official who heard them. This wasn't conquest, it was absorption. In Seoul, ordinary citizens gathered, in Gwanghwamun Square, holding candles and praying. Similar scenes played out worldwide. Religious leaders of every faith struggled to provide comfort in the face of the unimaginable. Children asked their parents questions that no parent should ever have to answer. Choi Sang-wook, a taxi driver in Busan, loaded his family into his cab and headed for the countryside. The roads were clogged with millions of others who had the same idea: get away from the cities that would surely be the first targets. But where could anyone really hide from an enemy that could scan the entire planet from space? As the final hours ticked away, President Park made one last desperate broadcast. "To whoever is listening in those ships above us, we are not asking for mercy. We are asking for a chance. Give us time to prove that humanity deserves to exist as a free species. Judge us by our capacity for growth, not by our current limitations." The deadline passed at exactly midnight, coordinated universal time. For 30 minutes nothing happened. Hope flickered in human hearts worldwide. Maybe the aliens would reconsider. Maybe they would give humanity more time. Then, the sky lit up with streaks of blue energy. The first target was New York City. The energy beam struck the heart of Manhattan, and in seconds, skyscrapers that had stood for decades simply vanished. Not destroyed, disintegrated at the molecular level. The attack was surgical, precise, and absolutely devastating. London followed, then Tokyo, then Mumbai. The pattern became clear. The aliens were systematically eliminating humanity's largest population centers, but they weren't trying to kill everyone. This was a demonstration of power, a message that resistance was futile. But as the first alien landing craft descended from the massive ships above, something the Vorthan collective had never encountered before began to happen. Instead of the mass surrender they expected, radio chatter between human military units increased. Evacuation procedures that should have led to chaos instead became organized retreats. In Seoul, in Berlin, in São Paulo, humans weren't just running, they were regrouping. The aliens had made their first critical error. They had given humanity something that no conquered species had ever possessed, advance warning that their enemy saw them as nothing more than resources to be harvested. And if there was one thing humans had proven throughout their history, it was that they became most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. 3 weeks after the bombardment, Lee Sujin crouched behind the twisted remains of what used to be a Hyundai factory in Busan. The alien patrol passed by exactly on schedule, 800 hours, just like yesterday and the day before. These Vorthans were creatures of habit, and that was going to be their downfall. Sujin had been a sergeant in the Republic of Korea Special Forces before the invasion. Now she was something else entirely, a ghost haunting the ruins of her homeland. She pressed the transmit button on her salvaged radio, whispering into the static-filled channel that connected scattered resistance cells across the peninsula. Phoenix. Base, this is Wildcat. Pattern confirmed. They're using the same route again. These things don't adapt. The voice that crackled back belonged to Kim Jae-hyun, a former police detective who now coordinated intelligence from a hidden bunker beneath Gangnam Station. Copy that, Wildcat. We're seeing the same behavior in Seoul sectors. It's like they're following a computer program. That was exactly what they were doing, though the humans didn't know it yet. The Vorthan military operated on predictive algorithms based on conquering 17 previous worlds. Every species they'd encountered had followed the same pattern: initial resistance, gradual demoralization, then complete surrender within 6 months. Their tactical protocols were designed around this timeline, but humans weren't following the script. In the ruins of Seoul National University, Dr. Choi Dong-wook worked by candlelight in what used to be the physics laboratory. The basement had survived the initial bombardment, and now it housed the most important research project in human history. Scattered across makeshift tables were fragments of a Vorthan fighter that had crashed in the Han River 2 weeks earlier. "Professor, look at this," whispered his graduate student Park Yuna, holding up a crystalline component that pulsed with faint blue light. "The energy output is incredible, but the material structure, it's almost organic." Dongwook examined the crystal under a salvaged microscope. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from excitement. They're not just using advanced technology, they're using living technology. The power cells are grown, not manufactured. This discovery would change everything, but they didn't know that yet. What mattered now was that human curiosity hadn't died with the cities. Even under alien occupation, even while hiding in basements and ruins, humans were still trying to understand their universe. The Vortan ground troops had established control points throughout major cities, but they were finding occupation more difficult than expected. Their previous conquests had involved species that accepted defeat once their military forces were destroyed. Humans seemed incapable of understanding when they were beaten. Commander Thexville reviewed reports from across the planet with growing frustration. Sector commanders reported constant harassment attacks, sabotage of supply lines, and coordinated strikes against communication equipment. The humans weren't fighting like a defeated species. They were fighting like they still believed they could win. "Sir," reported Subcommander Veltan, "Sector 7 requests additional reinforcements. The local population continues to resist integration protocols." Thexville's translation device struggled with the human concept of guerrilla warfare. In Vorthan culture, military defeat meant immediate surrender. The idea of civilians continuing to fight was literally incomprehensible to them. Meanwhile, in a hidden farm outside Daegu, former corporate executive Nam Soo-young was learning skills she never thought she'd need. How to forge identity documents, how to coordinate supply drops, how to move people and equipment without being detected by alien scanners. The key is thinking small, she explained to a group of newly recruited civilians. They're used to fighting armies, not individuals. Every person who refuses to give up is a victory they can't understand. Her resistance cell included a retired teacher, 2 college students, a mechanic, and a grandmother who had lived through the Korean War. None of them were soldiers, but all of them were learning to fight in ways the aliens couldn't predict. Dr. Choi's breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday morning. He'd been studying the organic components of Vorthan technology for days when he realized something crucial. Their weapons and their biology were connected. The aliens weren't just carrying tools. They were symbiotically linked to their equipment. "Yuna, come here," he called excitedly. "I think I understand how their shields work. It's not electromagnetic, it's biological. The shield generators respond to the user's nervous system." This meant Vorthan equipment was useless to other species, or so the aliens believed. But humans had something the Vorthans had never encountered: the ability to hack biological systems. Earth's experience with genetic engineering, primitive as it was, gave them insights the aliens never expected. Word spread through the resistance networks. Small victories were adding up. A supply convoy ambushed here, a communication relay sabotaged there. The aliens were learning that controlling Earth's cities didn't mean controlling Earth's people. Lee Sujin received confirmation of what many suspected. The resistance wasn't just surviving, it was growing. Every alien crackdown created more rebels. Every demonstration of power convinced more humans that surrender meant slavery or death. "Command, this is Wildcat," she reported during her evening check-in. "We've got confirmation. The enemy isn't just predictable, they're inflexible. They can't adapt to what they've never seen before. And what they'd never seen before was a species that treated impossible odds as a personal insult, that turned scientists into soldiers and grandmothers into saboteurs. The Vorthans had made their second critical error. They assumed human nature would change under pressure. Instead, the pressure was revealing exactly what humans were capable of when everything they loved was threatened. 6 months had passed since the first alien ships appeared over Earth, and Dr. Choi Dongwook was about to change the course of human history. In his makeshift laboratory beneath Seoul's subway system, he held up a device that looked like a Vorthan energy weapon, but hummed with a different frequency. "Yuna, step back," he warned his assistant as he activated the modified weapon. The blue energy beam that emerged was brighter, more focused than anything the aliens had produced. When it struck the concrete wall, it didn't just burn through, it vaporized a perfect circle 3 inches wider than a standard Vorthan blast. "Professor, how is that possible?" Park Yuna stared at the weapon in amazement. Dongwook smiled for the first time in months. "Because we didn't just copy their technology, we improved it. The organic components they use are actually quite inefficient. Human engineering principles made them 30% more powerful." Word of the breakthrough spread through encrypted channels to resistance cells across the globe. But this wasn't just about better weapons. It was about something the aliens had never encountered. Every species they'd conquered had tried to copy Vorthan technology and failed. Humans were the first to make it better. Lee Sujin received the first prototype weapon in a midnight drop outside Busan. The modified energy rifle felt lighter than the alien versions she'd captured, and when she tested it against a piece of Vorthan armor, the results were devastating. The supposedly impenetrable alien defense systems crumbled like paper. "This changes everything," she whispered into her radio. "Phoenix Base, we're not just fighting back anymore, we're fighting better." The resistance had been planning Operation Blackout for 3 months. Kim Jae-hyun coordinated the effort from his hidden command center, communicating with cells on every continent. The plan was ambitious beyond anything humans had attempted, a simultaneous global strike against every Vorthan communication facility on Earth. But they had advantages the aliens didn't expect. While the Vorthans had been busy controlling major cities, humans had been quietly moving their most brilliant minds to hidden locations. Underground facilities that had started as simple bomb shelters were now advanced research and manufacturing centers. The subway tunnels of Seoul, the London Underground, the New York subway system, All had become highways for a shadow civilization the aliens never knew existed. "Remember," Jae-hyun broadcast to resistance leaders worldwide, "we only get one chance at this. Every communication relay, every sensor array, every command post must be hit within the same 60-minute window. If even one sector remains connected, they'll coordinate a response." In Chicago, former NASA engineer Kim Min-jong led a team preparing to assault the Vorton Regional Command Center. Her group included a taxi driver, 2 teachers, a nurse, and a retired Marine, ordinary people who had become extraordinary soldiers through necessity. "The key is their overconfidence," she explained to her team. "They've never lost a battle, so they don't guard against coordinated attacks. Their security assumes we're still fighting like scattered groups of survivors." That assumption was about to cost them everything. At exactly 1500 hours Greenwich Mean Time, Operation Blackout began. In Seoul, Lee Soo-jin's team struck the primary communication hub using the new weapons. The enhanced energy beams cut through Vorton defenses like they were made of paper. Similar attacks erupted simultaneously in Tokyo, Sydney, Mumbai, Lagos, Sao Paulo, and dozens of other cities. The aliens' rigid command structure became their greatest weakness. When communication lines went dark, local commanders had no protocol for independent action. They'd been trained to follow orders from above, not to think creatively in crisis situations. Commander Thexval watched in horror as his tactical display showed communication failures cascading across the planet. Sector after sector went silent. Emergency protocols demanded he contact the High Command, but the humans had targeted those relays first. "Sir, we're completely cut off," reported Sub-Commander Veltan, panic creeping into his voice. "Local commanders are requesting instructions, but we have no way to coordinate responses." For the first time in 300 years of conquest, a Vorton military force was operating blind. The human attacks weren't random violence. They were surgical strikes based on months of intelligence gathering. Nam Soo-young's network had mapped every alien facility, timed every patrol, identified every weakness. When the resistance finally revealed itself, it wasn't as desperate survivors but as a coordinated military force. Dr. Choi's weapons weren't the only surprise humans had prepared. In hidden factories, they'd been reverse engineering and improving Vorton shield technology. The first human soldiers to emerge from underground bunkers wore energy shields that could deflect alien weapons while allowing their enhanced firearms to shoot through. The battle for Seoul lasted 4 hours. When it ended, Lee Soo-jin stood in the ruins of the Vorton Command Center, watching alien soldiers surrender for the first time in their species' military history. The proud warriors who had conquered 17 worlds were laying down their weapons to an enemy they'd dismissed as primitive. "Phoenix Base, this is Wildcat," she reported, hardly believing her own words. "Seoul is free. Repeat, Seoul is free." Similar reports flooded in from around the world. London freed, Tokyo liberated, New York back under human control. The species that had never known defeat was learning what it felt like to lose. But the humans weren't celebrating yet. They knew this was just the beginning. The real war was about to start, and it wouldn't be fought on Earth. As Kim Jae-hyun coordinated damage assessments and prisoner interrogations, one piece of intelligence changed everything. The Vorton databases contained star charts, fleet positions, and most importantly, the locations of other conquered worlds. Species that had given up hope decades ago, still living under alien oppression. Humanity was about to discover they weren't fighting just for Earth anymore. Dr. Choi Dong-wook stood on the bridge of what had once been a Vorton assault cruiser, now humanity's first interstellar warship. The alien vessel stretched nearly a kilometer long, its biomechanical systems humming with improvements that would have horrified its original builders. Human engineers had spent 3 months gutting and rebuilding the ship's interior, replacing rigid Vorton designs with something far more dangerous: human creativity. "Status report," called out Captain Lee Soo-jin, who had traded her gorilla. "Warfare for command of humanity's most ambitious mission yet." The woman who had once hidden in factory ruins now stood at the helm of a starship heading for Proxima Centauri. "All systems green, Captain," reported Kim Jae-hyun from the engineering station. The former police detective had become an expert in alien technology out of pure necessity. The hybrid power systems are performing beyond specifications. We're actually getting 40% more efficiency than the original Vorthan design, the HFY. Ship's crew represented everything remarkable about humanity's transformation. Former taxi driver Choi Sang-wook now served as navigation officer, using his knowledge of Seoul's complex street system to understand three-dimensional space navigation. Dr. Park Yuna had become the ship's science officer, her graduate studies in physics suddenly critical for understanding exotic matter and faster-than-light travel. But it was Lieutenant Kang Min-soo who would prove most valuable in the coming battle. The former test pilot for Korea Aerospace Industries had spent his career pushing experimental aircraft to their limits. Now he was developing combat maneuvers for space warfare that no alien tactical computer had ever imagined. "Captain, we're approaching the Proxima system," announced Nam Soo-young from the sensor station. Her skills in logistics and resource management had translated perfectly to coordinating a starship's complex systems. Enemy installation detected on long-range scanners. The Vorthan military outpost orbiting Proxima Centauri was supposed to be impregnable. It had served as a forward command base for 3 decades, coordinating the conquest of dozen worlds. Its commanders had never faced a serious threat. That was about to change. "Remember the plan?" Soo-jin addressed her crew over the intercom. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. Intelligence reports indicate 12 subjugated worlds with billions of enslaved beings. This outpost contains the tactical data we need to free them all." The human strike force consisted of 12 captured Vorthan ships, each one modified with improvements that pushed alien technology beyond its original limits. While the Vorthans built their vessels for reliability and standardization, humans had retrofitted them for performance and adaptability. Lieutenant Kang had spent weeks studying Vorthan combat recordings, analyzing their tactical patterns. "They fight like they're still in atmosphere," he explained to his pilots during their final briefing. "Linear approaches, predictable formations. They've never had to develop true 3-dimensional combat tactics because they've never faced an enemy that could challenge them in space." The battle began when the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Proxima system. Vorthan sensors immediately detected the approaching ships, but their identification systems created confusion. The vessels registered as Vorthan design, but their energy signatures were all wrong. Commander Zethkul of the Proxima outpost transmitted standard challenge codes, expecting routine responses from returning patrol ships. Instead, he received a message that would haunt Vorthan military historians for generations. "This is Captain Lee Soo-jin of the Terran Liberation Fleet. You have one opportunity to surrender. Release all prisoners and prepare for immediate evacuation. Refuse, and we will take the station by force." The Vorthan commander's response was predictable: attack formation, maximum firepower, complete confidence in superior numbers. The outpost's defensive fleet consisted of 30 warships against humanity's 12. By every tactical calculation, the outcome should have been inevitable. But Vorthan tactical calculations had never accounted for human pilots who treated space like an ocean instead of a road. Kang led the first attack wave, his fighter squadron, diving below the Vorthan formation before spiraling upward in a corkscrew pattern that confused enemy targeting systems. While alien pilots tried to reorient to threats coming from impossible angles, human gunners picked them apart with precision strikes. "They're flying like they're still thinking in 2 dimensions, Kang reported over the combat channel. "Keep using vertical attacks. Their brains can't process threats from above and below simultaneously." The larger human ships used tactics borrowed from submarine warfare. Captain Soo-jin's flagship disappeared behind Proxima's radiation belt, using the star's energy output to mask their approach before emerging directly behind the Vorthan command vessel. The enemy shields were designed to deflect attacks from the front, not from their vulnerable rear sections. Dr. Choi's weapon improvements proved decisive. The human-enhanced energy weapons cut through Vorthan defenses like they were made of paper. Ships that had survived decades of combat crumbled under the assault of their own technology, perfected by human engineering. The space battle lasted 4 hours. When the weapons finally went silent, every Vorthan ship was either destroyed or disabled. The mighty outpost that had coordinated alien expansion for 30 years now transmitted surrender codes on all frequencies. But the real victory came when human boarding parties accessed the station's central databases. Park Yuna worked frantically to download information that would reshape the war entirely. "Captain, you need to see this," she called excitedly. "It's not just tactical data. They have detailed records of every conquered world, every enslaved population, every resistance movement that's still fighting." The intelligence was staggering. 12 worlds with billions of beings still hoping for freedom. Some had been under Vorthon control for over a century, their populations resigned to permanent slavery. Others still had active resistance movements, waiting for any sign that liberation was possible. As Captain Sujin studied the star charts, showing the locations of subjugated worlds, she realized humanity had passed a point of no return. They weren't just fighting for their own freedom anymore, they were fighting for the freedom of an entire galaxy. The hunter had truly become the hunted. 2 years had passed since the first Vorthan ships appeared over Earth, and now Admiral Sojin commanded a fleet that would have been unimaginable during those dark early days. 40 warships filled the space around Kepler 442b, their hulls bearing the symbols of 7 different liberated worlds. What had started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become something far greater, a galactic revolution. "Admiral, we're receiving transmission from the Zephyrian delegation," reported Commander Kim Jae-hyun from the communication station. The former police detective now served as Sujin's intelligence chief, coordinating information from across the growing coalition of free worlds. The Zephyrians had been the first species humanity liberated, their crystalline cities on Kepler 442b having endured Vorthon occupation for nearly 80 years. When human ships first appeared in their system, many Zephyrians thought it was another alien invasion. They couldn't believe that the primitive species from the third planet had not only survived, but was offering them freedom. "Put them through," Sujin replied, watching as the holographic image of Ambassador Kethron materialized on the bridge. The tall, graceful alien's skin sparkled, with the natural luminescence that gave his species their name. "Admiral Sujin, our deep space monitors have detected massive Vorthon fleet movements," the ambassador reported, his translated voice carrying obvious concern. "They're pulling ships from 12 different sectors. This appears to be their final gambit." Dr. Choi Dongwook, now Director of Xenotechnology Development, studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. "They're making the same mistake they made with Earth," he observed. "Concentrating their forces for one decisive battle, they still don't understand that we don't fight like them." The human-led coalition had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Each liberated world brought new allies, new technologies, and new reasons to fight. The Aquilans contributed their mastery of energy manipulation. The Draconians shared their advanced metallurgy. The Centaurians provided expertise in biotechnology that even surpassed Vorthan capabilities. But it was human leadership that held the alliance together. While other species had accepted defeat when faced with superior force, humans had taught them something revolutionary: that technology could be improved, that tactics could be adapted, and that freedom was worth any sacrifice. "Status report from all task forces," Sujin ordered as her fleet prepared for the jump to Vorthan Prime, the heart of the alien empire. The reports came in from across the galaxy. Captain Nam Soo-young commanded the Eastern Fleet, liberating worlds. In the Orion sector, Commander Park Yuna led scientific teams reverse engineering Vorthon technology faster than the aliens could adapt. Lieutenant Kang Min-soo trained pilots from a dozen species in the three-dimensional combat tactics that had proven so effective against rigid Vorthon formations. Each success had sent shockwaves through the Vorthon collective. For 3 centuries, their expansion had been unstoppable. Worlds fell in predictable patterns, species surrendered according to established timelines, and order was maintained through overwhelming force. The very concept of a successful rebellion was foreign to their culture. "Admiral, we're ready for the final jump," reported Chief Engineer Choi Sang-wook. The former taxi driver had become an expert in faster-than-light travel. his intuitive understanding of navigation proving invaluable for coordinating fleet movements across interstellar distances. The battle fleet that emerged from hyperspace above Vorthon Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships of human design flew alongside vessels from 7 liberated worlds, their combined technologies creating a force that represented the best of multiple civilizations working together. High Commander Thexval watched the approaching fleet from his command center on the planet's surface. The same alien who had dismissed humanity as a Class C species now faced the reality that his empire was crumbling. Rebellion had spread to 23 worlds. Vorthon military doctrine had no protocols for dealing with sustained resistance. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies," reported his communications officer. The message that reached every Vorthon receiver was simple and devastating. "This is Admiral Li Sujin of the Terran Liberation Coalition. We are not here for conquest. We are here to offer the same choice you once gave us. Surrender unconditionally or face the consequences of your actions." But the real shock came with the next transmission. It wasn't from the human fleet at all, but from Vorthon ships within their own defensive formations. 3 entire battle groups had defected, their crews choosing freedom over the rigid hierarchy that had defined their species for millennia. "Commander Veltan of the Vorthon Liberation." "Front," came the transmission from one of the defecting ships. "We stand with the Coalition. The age of forced expansion is over." The battle for Vorthon Prime was both the largest and shortest engagement of the war. When faced with combined human tactics, alien technologies, and the knowledge that their own people were abandoning the cause, Vorthon resistance collapsed within hours. High Commander Thexval transmitted his final message as Coalition forces breached the planetary defense grid. Emergency protocol to all Vorthon forces. Immediate. Retreat from all contested systems. Warning to all species in the galactic community, never underestimate the humans. They are unlike any species we have encountered. They do not accept defeat. They do not surrender. They turn our own strengths against us and make them better. But the most remarkable moment came 6 months later, when President Park Min-ho stood before the newly formed Galactic Council. Representatives from 47 worlds, including several Vorthon colonies that had voted for independence, listened as he outlined humanity's vision for the future. Earth proposes a new galactic charter based on a simple principle that my species has always believed in, that no being should bow to another. Freedom is not a privilege to be granted. It is a right to be defended. Independence is not something that can be taken away by force. It is something that must be chosen freely. The Galactic Freedom Charter was signed by representatives of 51 worlds within the year. The document established principles that would have seemed revolutionary just 3 years earlier. That species had the right to self-determination. That technology should benefit all beings. And that diversity of thought and culture made the galaxy stronger. The Vorthon Collective had made one final miscalculation. They had attacked the one species in the galaxy that viewed impossible odds, not as a reason to surrender, but as motivation to become something greater. Humanity hadn't just survived first contact, they had transformed what it meant to be free in a galaxy where freedom had almost been forgotten. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun,